A master desperate to save his failing plantation brings his young kitchen servant to the grand county ball. But this girl carries more than just a voice that silences rooms. She reads wax seals like gospel truth and remembers every crooked letter. When chandeliers dim and couples stop dancing, whispers spread like wildfire. Then thunder rolls across the river, and a man with forged papers rides hard through the storm. Hidden in a family Bible lies a penciled promise that could change everything. Dogs bark in the distance. Lanterns swing through cypress trees. The courthouse steps await at dawn. But when the seal breaks and the truth spills out like lamplight on tin, will a child's sharp eyes be enough to outwit men with badges and lies? Or will morning bring chains instead of freedom papers? The kitchen held its breath in the hour before dawn. Mercy pressed her palm against the warm skillet's side and counted. 1 breath in. Hold 4 heartbeats. 1 breath out. The rhythm settled into her bones like a hymn she'd always known. Asa Whitcomb's cough rattled through the ceiling boards above. She lifted her hand from the iron and wiped flour dust on her apron. The cough came again, harsh, catching in his throat like a fish hook. "Mercy, child." Aunt Hester's voice floated from the hearth corner, where steam rose from a bowl of horehound and mullein. "Take him that breath tea. Lord knows what fever dreams are chasing through his head tonight." Mercy climbed the narrow stairs, bare feet finding each board's sweet spot to keep the creaking low. Through the door crack, she saw Asa doubled over his washstand, shoulders shaking with each cough. She knocked twice and waited. "Come." The room smelled of lamp oil and sour sweat. Asa turned, his face grey in the lamplight. "What you got there, girl?" "Aunt Hester's brew. Drink it warm." He took the bowl with trembling hands. The first sip brought another cough, harder than before. Mercy watched his breathing snag and fight. Without thinking, she began to hum low a tune that came from somewhere deeper than memory. 1 breath in. Hold 4 beats. 1 breath out. Her humming found the rhythm of his chest, rising and falling. His breathing started to follow her tune, slower now, steadier. The cough gentled and stopped. Asa stared at her over the rim of the bowl. "How'd you do that?" "Do what, sir?" "Settle my breathing like that." Mercy felt heat climb her neck. "Don't know, sir. Just hummed what felt right." He drank the rest of the tea and set the bowl on his night table. Outside, roosters called across the river bottom. Soon the kitchen would fill with breakfast smoke and the sound of field hands gathering for the day's work. "Mercy." Asa's voice was different now, thoughtful. "Today's the county gala down at Riverside Hall. All the planters will be there. All the creditors, too." She nodded. She knew about the debts. Everyone knew. The harvest had been thin 2 years running. Bills, stacked up on Asa's desk like autumn leaves. "I've been thinking," he said. "Maybe you could come along. Sing for the folks. Your voice might ease things some." The words hung between them. An enslaved girl at the county gala. It wasn't done. Not ever. "Sir, you settle my cough with nothing but a hum. Maybe you can settle other troubled things too." He rubbed his temples. "Lord knows I need all the help I can find." Mercy felt something flutter in her chest. Not quite hope, but something close to it. "Yes, sir." "Good. Tell Aunt Hester to fetch Eliza's Bible from the trunk in the loom room, and get yourself washed proper. We leave at dusk." The loom room lay deep in the house's belly, past the pantry and the root cellar door. Sunlight slanted through one small window, catching dust motes that danced like tiny spirits. Mercy knelt beside Eliza Whitcomb's trunk-carved cedar that still held the ghost of her lavender water. Aunt Hester lifted the lid with careful hands. Poor Miss Eliza. Took fever 5 winters back and never saw another spring. Inside, silk dresses lay folded between sheets of brown paper. At the bottom, wrapped in muslin, sat the Bible. Mercy lifted it out. The leather binding felt warm, as if it held sunlight in its grain. "Why's Master want this particular book?" Mercy asked. "His daddy gave it to Miss Eliza when they married. Got her family's name pressed right into the cover. See?" Aunt Hester traced the gold letters with one finger. "Might help with his standing tonight." Mercy opened the Bible and breathed in the smell of old paper and pressed flowers. The pages whispered as she turned them. Psalms, Proverbs, the Gospels with their red-letter words. Then she saw it, in the margin of Deuteronomy, written in faint pencil, "When the debt of A. Whitcomb shall be satisfied to the sum of $847, then shall Mercy, daughter of Sarah, be free before God and man. E. W. The words blurred. Mercy blinked hard and read them again. $847. Eliza Whitcomb's own hand. A promise written in the margins of Scripture. Aunt Hester. Her voice came out strange and thin. Look here. Aunt Hester bent close and squinted at the faint markings. Her lips moved silently as she read. When she finished, she sank back on her heels. Lord have mercy. $847, Mercy whispered. That's near what Master owes, isn't it? I heard him tell Mr. Pike the other day 830, maybe 40. Child, you sure you read that right? Mercy pointed to each word. She could read as well as any white child in the county, better than most. Miss Eliza had taught her letters before the fever came. Every soul deserves to know God's word for themselves, she used to say. I read it right. Old Bram appeared in the doorway, his white hair catching the afternoon light. Y'all best keep voices down. Pike's prowling around, asking after Sunset travel papers. What kind of papers? Aunt Hester asked. The kind that let folks move slaves after curfew. Says he's doing Master a favor, but favors from Luke Pike don't come free. Mercy felt cold spread through her belly. She closed the Bible and held it tight. Old Bram, what you know about traveling roads at night? He studied her face. Why you asking, little sister? Just wondering. Well, he scratched his chin. Patrollers got particular ways they do things. County SEAL's been changing colors every few weeks trying to stay ahead of forged papers. Tonight they're using brown wax, last I heard. And if you got to cross yards after dark, you carry your lantern low. Signal you got business, not trouble. Mercy tucked the Bible under her arm. $847, she said again, tasting the numbers. What's that now? Old Bram asked. Just practicing my ciphering. The afternoon stretched long and heavy. Mercy helped Aunt Hester with washing and mending, but her mind kept circling back to those penciled words. When the debt of A. Whitcomb shall be satisfied to the sum of $847. Around 4 o'clock, Luke Pike rode up the lane. Mercy watched from the kitchen window as he dismounted and tied his horse to the porch rail. Pike was a lean man with a pointed beard and eyes like blue winter ice. He managed the next plantation over, but he'd been spending more time at the Whitcomb place lately. Too much time, according to Aunt Hester. Asa, Pike called, not bothering to knock. Got news about your creditors. Mercy crept closer to the hall door. Through the crack, she saw Pike spread papers across Asa's desk. First Bank's getting restless about the note. But I might could help you work something out. What kind of help? Asa's voice sounded tired. Well, you got assets they'd take in trade. That kitchen girl, for instance. Smart as a whip and easy on the eyes. I could arrange a sale, clean off most of your debt. Mercy's not for sale. Everything's for sale when the bank comes calling. Think about it, one transaction, and your troubles are mostly over. Mercy pressed her ear closer to the crack. The floorboard creaked under her weight. Hey, I said no, Pike. Your choice. For now. Pike's boots scraped against the floor. Just remember, come foreclosure, the bank takes everything anyway. Better to salvage what you can. A few minutes later, Pike left. Mercy hurried back to the kitchen before Asa could find her listening. At sunset, Silas Wren arrived with the Evening Post. He was the county clerk, a nervous young man with ink stains on his fingers and a habit of adjusting his spectacles when he talked. Mercy brought him coffee while he sorted through official papers with Asa. Shortage of proper sealing wax this week, Silas said, dabbing his quill in the inkwell. Had to order brown from Richmond. County's using it for night travel passes starting tonight. Brown? Asa asked, instead of the usual red. Got to stay ahead of the forgers, you understand. Some folks try to make their own passes with whatever wax they can find. Mercy filed the information away like a coin in a pocket. Brown wax for night passes, not red. After Silas left, she found time to knot her blue hair ribbon around the Bible's spine. The silk felt smooth and warm against her fingers. $847. In her mind, she could see every curve of Eliza Whitcomb's penciled numbers. As darkness settled over the plantation, Aunt Hester heated water for Mercy's bath. She laid out a plain brown dress, good wool, but without ornament. Keep yourself modest tonight, she said, braiding Mercy's hair with careful fingers. Let your voice do the talking, not your appearance. She tied a small black ribbon around Mercy's wrist, a quiet reminder of mourning that would speak to the evening's purpose. Now listen close. If you got to find your way in the dark, there's hymns that map the roads. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah. 2 verses takes you from the plantation gate to the ferry landing. 1 verse more gets you to the chapel door. And how firm a foundation, that's the road from chapel to courthouse. 3 verses, exact. Mercy repeated the root songs until she had them fixed in memory. Aunt Hester nodded approval. Why are you teaching me this? Mercy asked. Because knowing the way home matters. Always. Outside, the dogs started barking as Asa hitched the wagon. Mercy began humming low, not the lullaby from the morning, but something new. The barking gentle to whimpers, then stopped altogether. Even the most quarrelsome hound settled on his belly and watched her with bright, curious eyes. Lord, Aunt Hester breathed. Child, you got a gift. Luke Pike appeared beside the wagon as they prepared to leave. Asa, you sure about taking her? Folks might talk. Let them talk. Well, if you're set on it, I know a shortcut that avoids the main patrol road. Keep you from having to show papers at every crossroads. Asa nodded. Much obliged. They climbed into the wagon, Asa on the driver's bench, Mercy behind him on a cushion of feed sacks. The Bible rested in her lap, its leather warm from her hands. Pike swung onto his own horse. Follow me. I know just the route. As they pulled away from the house, Mercy lifted the lantern to the angle old Bram had shown her, low and steady, signaling peaceful business. The plantation gate creaked open. Ahead lay river fog and whatever waited beyond the water. Behind them, the dogs watched in silence until the wagon disappeared into the night. River fog clung to the ferry landing like wet cotton. Mercy felt it settle on her skin as Asa guided the wagon down the muddy slope toward the water. Lanterns bobbed on the opposite bank, where Riverside Hall glowed with warm yellow light. Mercy. She turned to find Elias Hart emerging from the mist. The Quaker neighbor wore his plain brown coat and wide-brimmed hat. His wife, Miriam, stood beside him, holding a shawl close against the night air. Friend Whitcomb, Elias said, nodding to Asa. Thee brings unexpected company tonight. Mercy's got a voice that settles troubles, Asa replied. Figure the evening might need some settling. Elias studied Mercy's face in the lantern light. Something passed between them, a recognition that had nothing to do with words. The meeting house has been tracking debts paid through our poor fund. If accounts need verifying tonight, we could fetch the church ledger. Might come to that, Asa said carefully. Of course, letters to confirm such matters would take weeks to arrange. Tonight must stand on what's carried in hand. Elias pointed his ferry pole toward the lights across the water. Truth travels light when it travels at all. Miriam stepped closer to the wagon. Child, that's a fine Bible thee carries. Family book? Yes. Belonged to the late Mrs. Whitcomb. Eliza was a good woman. She understood justice. Miriam's eyes held, meaning that Mercy caught and held. Sometimes the most important words are written in the quietest places. The ferry groaned as Elias poled them across the black water. Behind them, Pike rode his horse onto the platform, cursing softly when the animal shied at the moving deck. Ahead, the Gala lights grew brighter, chandeliers visible through tall windows, the sound of fiddles and laughter carrying across the river. Riverside Hall rose from the riverbank like something from a dream. White columns supported a wide veranda where well-dressed couples strolled between Chinese lanterns. Through the open doors, Mercy glimpsed swirling skirts and black evening coats, crystal glasses catching candlelight. Remember, Asa said as they approached the entrance, you're here to sing, nothing more. But Mercy felt the Bible's weight in her hands and knew tonight would ask for more than singing. The entrance hall blazed with chandelier light. Conversations hummed like summer insects. Then Mercy stepped across the threshold. Silence fell like a curtain dropped. Couples stopped mid-step on the polished floor. Fiddles trailed into quiet. Every face turned toward the doorway, where a young enslaved girl stood holding a leather Bible, her blue ribbon catching the crystal light. He took his slave girl to the Gala, someone whispered. The whisper spread like ripples on still water. When she walked in, everyone fell in love, and it was true. Something about Mercy's presence, the way she carried herself, the stillness that seemed to emanate from her small frame, held the room spellbound. Children pressed forward to see her better. Ladies fanned themselves and murmured behind gloved hands. Even the servants stopped their work to stare. Asa cleared his throat. "This is Mercy," she sings. Sings? Margaret Riverside stepped forward, her silk dress rustling. "What kind of songs does she know?" Before Mercy could answer, a voice spoke from the edge of the crowd. "Hymns, I'd wager. The old ones that map the roads between here and heaven." Reverend Bell pushed through the gathering, his collar white against his black coat. "I've heard this child sing at meeting-house gatherings, voice like an angel's trumpet." "Then let's hear it," called a man near the back. Mercy looked at Asa. He nodded. She opened her mouth and let the first notes of "Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah," rise into the chandelier light. Her voice filled every corner of the grand hall, clear and true, with a purity that made grown men blink back tears. "Guide me, O Thou Great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land." As she sang, her eyes found Pike near the door. He stood talking low with a man she didn't recognize, someone wearing a patroller's badge and a red wax seal on his hat ribbon. Pike kept glancing toward her, his face tight with something that looked like planning. "I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand." When the hymn ended, the hall stayed silent for a heartbeat. Then applause erupted, gentle at first, then building like thunder. Ladies dabbed their eyes with lace handkerchiefs. Men cleared their throats and straightened their shoulders. "Remarkable," breathed Doctor Carson. "Simply remarkable." Asa moved through the crowd, accepting compliments and discussing his accounts with potential creditors. Mercy stayed near the wall, clutching the Bible and watching Pike's movements. The man with the patroller's badge kept checking a paper in his coat pocket, something with red wax sealing the fold. "Child." Mercy turned to find Elias Hart at her elbow. "That Bible thee carries," he said quietly. "Does it hold more than Scripture?" She met his eyes. "Yes, sir, it does. I thought as much. The church ledger I mentioned, it shows debts paid through our poor fund, $837 credited to the Whitcomb account over the past 2 years. Mercy's heart jumped. $837, so close to the penciled figure in the Bible's margin. That's most of what's owed. Indeed. And with interest calculations. Elias paused. Well, such matters would need careful reviewing. By morning, perhaps. Across the hall, Pike was moving toward them, the patroller close behind. "Trouble comes," Elias murmured. Pike arrived with a broad smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mercy, there you are. This here's Tom Cullum. He handles transport papers for the county." Cullum touched his hat. His fingers bore ink stains, and his pocket bulged with official documents. "Pleasure, miss. Mr. Pike tells me you might need traveling papers for tonight." "I don't understand," Mercy said. Pike pulled a folded document from his coat. Red wax sealed the paper, bright as fresh blood. "See? Asa signed over your papers to settle part of his debt. Fair and legal. But Cullum here needs you to travel tonight. Got a buyer downriver who's willing to pay premium for a girl with your talents." "No." The word came out harder than Mercy intended. "Master Whitcomb didn't sign anything. Now, girl, don't make trouble." Pike's voice carried an edge. "The paper's all proper. Red wax seal, official and binding." Mercy stared at the document. Something about the seal looked wrong, but she couldn't place what. Then she remembered Silas Wren's words from that afternoon. "Counties using brown wax for night travel passes starting tonight." "The seal," she said. "It's red. Course it's red. Always been red." "No, sir. County seal's brown tonight." "Mister." Silas told Master Whitcomb this afternoon they changed it to stay ahead of forgers. Pike's smile faltered. "You calling this paper a fake? I'm saying the wax is wrong color for night travel." "And?" Mercy looked closer at the document's header. Something about the lettering troubled her eye. "That R in Riverton got a crooked serif. County clerk's got a straight hand. This looks shaky." Cullum snatched the paper back. Girl's got sharp eyes. "Too sharp for her own good," Pike muttered. Elias stepped forward. "Perhaps we should examine this matter more carefully. The church basement has ledgers that might shed light on the debt situation, and if papers are in question." "Nothing's in question," Pike snapped. Asa signed fair and square, but doubt had crept into Cullum's voice. "Pike." if the seal's wrong and the girl's reading true. The girl's reading trouble where there ain't none. Mercy hugged the Bible tight and felt Eliza Whitcomb's penciled promise. Through the leather cover, $847. So close to what the church ledger showed, so close to freedom she could taste it like honey on her tongue. Thunder rumbled outside. Through the tall windows, lightning flickered over the river. The storm that had been threatening all day was finally coming home. The church basement smelled of old hymnals and lamp oil. Reverend Bell led them down the narrow stairs while rain drummed against the windows above. Elias and Miriam followed, along with Dr. Carson and two other planters who'd insisted on witnessing whatever business was unfolding. Pike came last, his face dark as the storm clouds outside. "Ledgers are in the trunk by the harmonium," Reverend Bell said, lifting his lantern high. "Elias keeps our accounts in good order." They pulled quilts and psalm books from the wooden trunk until the record books emerged, leather-bound volumes with careful columns of figures. Elias opened the most recent ledger and ran his finger down the page. "Here, Whitcomb account. Poor fund disbursements over 26 months. His finger stopped. "Total, $837. Dr. Carson whistled low. "That's considerable. The meeting house takes care of its neighbors," Miriam said quietly. Mercy opened the Bible to Deuteronomy. The penciled margin words seemed to glow in the lamplight. "When the debt of A. Whitcomb shall be satisfied to the sum of $847. $10 difference," she said, between the ledger and the Bible figure. "Interest," Elias said, "or fees." "Small matter, easily resolved." Pike grabbed for the Bible. "Let me see that." Mercy pulled it back. "These are Miss Eliza's words. She wrote them herself." "Eliza Whitcomb." Dr. Carson moved closer. "I treated her in her final illness. That woman had a mind like a steel trap and a heart soft as butter. If she wrote something about manumission—" "It's right here." Mercy pointed to each word. "Clear as daylight." Reverend Bell examined the margin closely. "That's Eliza's hand, sure enough. I've seen it in donation records and church correspondence. Still doesn't matter," Pike said. "Asa signed over the girl's papers tonight. Done deal." "If the papers are genuine," Dr. Carson said pointedly. Cullum shifted his weight. "About that. Girl made some observations about the seal color." "What observations?" Reverend Bell asked. Mercy straightened her shoulders. "County's using brown wax for night passes tonight. Has been since this afternoon, according to Mr. Silas. But Mr. Pike's document got red wax, and the lettering looks shaky, not like Mr. Silas's usual hand." Thunder shook the building. Through the basement windows, they could see rain slashing sideways across the churchyard. "Storm's getting worse," Miriam observed. "We should get back to the hall," Pike said. "Folks will be looking for us." But no one moved. In the lamplight, with the storm raging overhead, the basement felt like a sanctuary, a place where truth could be examined without interruption. Elias closed the ledger carefully. "Morning will bring clearer light for these matters. Perhaps we should wait for proper daylight to make such important decisions." "Morning might be too late," Pike said. "Cullum's got a schedule to keep." "What schedule?" Dr. Carson asked. Cullum looked uncomfortable. "Well, there's a boat heading down river at dawn. Buyers expecting delivery." "Expecting delivery of what?" Reverend Bell's voice carried warning. "Of whoever's named on legal papers." But Cullum's conviction was weakening. Mercy felt the storm's power building outside like a living thing. Wind howled around the church corners. Rain hammered the roof like drumsticks. And somewhere in that chaos, she sensed opportunity. If the storm was strong enough to flood roads and wash out bridges, then papers and seals and schedules might not matter. Sometimes weather forced people to rely on things deeper than documents. Things like courage and memory and the quiet promises written in Bible margins. She hugged the book closer and listened to thunder shake the world above their heads. Lightning split the sky as they climbed from the church basement. The storm had grown teeth while they examined ledgers and argued over seals. Rain slashed sideways across the churchyard, and wind bent the old oaks until their branches scraped ground. "Bridge might be out," Dr. Carson shouted over the gale. "River's running high this time of year." Pike grabbed Cullum's arm. "We got to move the girl tonight. Storm or no storm. In this weather?" Cullum shook his head. "Roads'll be soup." Creek crossings washed out. Find a way. Mercy pressed the Bible against her chest and watched lightning illuminate the churning river. The ferry platform bucked like a wild horse against its moorings. No crossing there tonight. There's the old Cypress Road, Pike said. Runs along the ridge above the floodline. Elias Hart appeared at Mercy's shoulder. The Cypress Road's treacherous in good weather. In a storm like this. We'll manage. Pike's voice carried desperation now. Cullum's got men waiting downriver, papers are signed. Deal's done. But when they reached the wagon, they found Asa Whitcomb collapsed against the driver's bench. His fever had returned with the storm's pressure. Sweat beaded his forehead despite the cold rain, and his breathing came quick and shallow. Master Asa? Mercy climbed into the wagon bed. His eyes opened, unfocused. Mercy? Where? What's happening? Storm's got you confused. Lie still. She began humming the lullaby rhythm from that morning, 1 breath in, hold 4 beats, 1 breath out. Her fingers found the pulse at his wrist and counted with the tune. Slowly, his breathing settled to match her tempo. How's she doing that? Cullum asked. Child's got the gift, Reverend Bell said. Seen it before in healers and midwives. Some folks just know how to calm a body's storm. Pike paced beside the wagon, rain streaming off his hat brim. Fever or no fever, we're moving tonight. Cullum, get your men. We'll take the Cypress Road and sort everything else at the landing. Pike, Cullum's voice had turned careful. About them papers. Girl raised some points about seals and such. Maybe we ought to wait for morning, get the clerk to verify. Papers are good, now move. Mercy kept humming while she watched Pike signal to shadows lurking near the tree line. 3 men materialized from the storm patrollers with rain-slick oilcloth coats and heavy boots. Their leader wore a red wax seal on his hatband, just like the one on Pike's forged document. That's him, she whispered to Elias. The one with the crooked seal. I see him, child. Lightning flashed again, and for one brilliant moment, the landscape revealed itself. The main road had vanished under floodwater, but there, jutting from the cypress grove, a ferry pole marked a crossing that most folks forgot about, the old route that connected the ridge road to the courthouse path. Mercy knew that route. Aunt Hester's hymns had mapped it clear as any surveyor's line. But did anyone else remember it? Mr. Pike, she called out. Cypress Road's got a washout half a mile up. Saw it when the lightning flashed. Pike squinted through the rain. You sure? Yes, sir, but there's another way. Old ferry crossing through the grove. Comes out near the courthouse back road. How you know that? Miss Eliza used to take me riding that way. Before the fever. It was a lie, but a useful one. Pike needed to believe she was trying to help, not hinder. Show us, he said. They followed Mercy's directions along a muddy track that wound between massive cypress trees. The storm's fury seemed muffled here, though wind still sighed through Spanish moss like voices of the dead. Asa rode in the wagon bed, his fever climbing. Mercy kept one hand on his wrist and the other on the Bible, counting heartbeats and humming under her breath. Behind them, Pike and his patrollers bunched together against the rain. The track split ahead. One path curved toward the river crossing. The other angled away into darker woods, a route that would take riders in circles until morning. Which way? Pike called. Mercy lifted the lantern to signal left toward the river. But as she raised it, she remembered old Bram's teachings about lantern angles and night signals. Low for peaceful business, high for attention, tilted just so. She angled the light to catch the storm wind, making it swing wild. Anyone watching from a distance would see the erratic movement and know something was wrong. This way, she said, pointing toward the false path. Lightning blazed overhead as Pike and 2 patrollers followed her gesture into the looping trail, but Cullum hung back, studying the crossroads. Girl, he said, that seal on my hat, what color you say the county's using tonight? Mercy met his eyes. Rain dripped from her hair ribbon, but her voice stayed steady. Brown, sir, for night travel. Red's what they used last week. Cullum touched his hatband, where the red wax gleamed wetly. His face changed as understanding dawned. Pike's been playing us for fools. In the distance, they heard Pike cursing as his horse struggled through deepening mud on the false trail. This way, Elias said quietly, indicating the river path. Before he finds his way back. The old ferry crossing was little more than rope and planks stretched between cypress stumps, but it held. Elias went first, testing each board. Then Mercy helped guide Asa across, while Cullum and his remaining man followed with the horses. Halfway over, the planks groaned under the wagon's weight. Black water swirled below, carrying branches and debris from upstream. One wheel slipped sideways. "Hold steady," Elias called. Mercy began singing, "Guide me, O thou great Jehovah," not for comfort now, but as a counting song to keep their movements rhythmic and sure. The wagon lurched, settled, rolled forward again. They reached the far bank, just as Pike emerged from the woods behind them. His curses carried across the water, but the storm-swollen creek had become uncrossable. They were safe for now. "Courthouse is 2 miles, Cullum said. "We can make it before dawn." "Why help us?" Mercy asked. Cullum removed his hat and studied the red seal. "Because a man ought to know when he's been played for a fool. And because that hymn you sang back there. My grandmother used to sing it just that way." They climbed the courthouse road as lightning faded and thunder moved east. Asa's fever broke sometime before dawn, leaving him weak but clear-headed. When Mercy showed him the Bible's penciled margin, his eyes filled with tears. "Eliza," he whispered, "she always said justice finds a way." The courthouse steps were slick with rain when they arrived. Inside, lamplight showed through the clerk's office window. Silas Wren was already at his desk, preparing the morning's business with brown wax warming over a candle flame. Mercy climbed the steps, with the Bible clutched against her chest. Behind her came Elias with the church ledger, Cullum with his doubts about forged papers, and Asa with his fever-cleansed understanding of what was right. The storm had passed. Dawn was breaking over the county seat, and in her hands, Mercy carried $847 worth of penciled promise, written long ago in the margin of sacred text. The doors opened. Light spilled golden across the courthouse floor. It was time. Dawn painted the courthouse steps gold and silver. Storm water still ran in the street gutters, and puddles reflected the breaking sky like scattered mirrors. Mercy stood before the heavy oak doors, feeling the Bible's weight in her arms and the weight of the moment in her chest. "You ready, child?" Elias asked. She nodded, though her knees felt soft as river clay. Inside, the clerk's office buzzed with early morning business. Silas Wren looked up from his desk as they entered Mercy, Elias, Cullum, and Asa, leaning heavy on a walking stick. Word had spread during the night. Dr. Carson arrived with Reverend Bell. Then came the Harts, and Margaret Riverside, and other gala guests drawn by the promise of drama. "Quite a gathering," Silas said, adjusting his spectacles. "What's the urgency that brings you all here before breakfast?" Mercy stepped forward. Her voice came out smaller than she'd hoped, but clear. "Got some papers to examine, sir, about truth and forgery and what's legal by law." Silas looked puzzled until Cullum produced Pike's red-sealed document. "Girl says this pass is forged. Questions about wax color and handwriting." "Let me see." Silas took the paper and held it to the lamplight. His trained eye found the problems immediately. "This isn't my work. The letter forms are clumsy, and the wax." He touched the red seal with one fingertip. "We haven't used red for night passes in over a week. Been brown since Tuesday." "That's what I told them," Mercy said. "Smart girl." Silas reached for his seal knife, a thin blade used for cutting through official wax. "This document is null, fraudulent. Whoever made it could face serious charges under federal law." The knife's edge sliced through the red wax, like it was cutting through a lie. The pieces fell onto the desk like fragments of broken blood. "Now then," Silas said, "what other business brings you here?" Mercy opened the Bible to Deuteronomy and showed him the penciled margin. Miss Eliza wrote this before she died. "Promise of manumission when the debt reaches $847. Silas studied the faint writing. "This appears genuine. I've seen Eliza Whitcomb's hand many times, but we'd need to verify the debt amount." Elias produced the church ledger. $837 documented here. "Paid through our poor fund over 2 years. $10 difference," Dr. Carson observed. "Interest and fees," Asa said weakly. He'd found his voice again, along with his conscience. "The full amount's been satisfied. I can swear to that." Silas opened his official record book and began writing. His quill scratched against the paper like a prayer being inscribed. "This will require proper documentation, sworn statements, official seals. Use brown wax," Mercy said. Silas smiled. Brown wax it is. The crowd had grown. Word travelled fast in a county seat, especially word about enslaved girls who could read seals like tea leaves and spot forgeries that fooled grown men. Planters came, and townspeople and dock workers from the river landing. They pressed close to the courthouse steps as Silas prepared his official documents. Pike arrived just as the clerk was warming fresh wax over his candle. He rode up hard, his horse lathered, and his face twisted with rage. 3 patrollers flanked him, but they looked uncertain now, men who'd signed onto a simple transport job and found themselves mixed up in forgery and fraud. "That girl belongs to me," Pike shouted. "Got papers to prove it." "Papers have been examined," Cullum said, "and found wanting." "Examined by who?" Silas held up the broken red wax. "By the county clerk. Your documents are forgeries, Mr. Pike, poorly done ones at that." Pike's face went white, then red. "You can't prove nothing." "Actually, I can." Mercy's voice carried further than it should have for someone her size. "That are in Riverton got a crooked serif. Mr. Silas writes his letters straight and true, and the wax is wrong color, wrong texture. You used candle drippings, didn't you? Real seal wax has a different feel when it breaks." The crowd murmured approval. Several people pushed closer to see the evidence for themselves. "Besides," Mercy continued, "Miss Eliza's promise is older than your forgery, written right here in the Bible margin, plain as morning light." She held the book open so everyone could see. Reverend Bell read the penciled words aloud. "When the debt of A. Whitcomb shall be satisfied to the sum of $847, then shall Mercy, daughter of Sarah, be free before God and man. E. W." "That's Eliza's hand," confirmed Mrs. Riverside. "I've seen it in her letters. And the debt's been satisfied," Elias added, showing the church ledger. "Every penny accounted for." Silas dipped his quill and signed the manumission papers with a flourish. Then he reached for the brown wax, now soft and ready for sealing. The wax dripped onto the official seal, and when he pressed his embossing tool into the warm surface, it left the county's mark clean and true. The seal seemed to thunder in the morning quiet. "Mercy, daughter of Sarah," Silas read formally, "by the authority vested in me as county clerk, and by the testament of Eliza Whitcomb, I hereby declare you a free person before God and the law of this land." The crowd erupted. Some folks cheered, others wept. Mrs. Riverside fanned herself and declared it the most remarkable thing she'd seen in 40 years of county business. Mercy stared at the fresh brown wax as it cooled and hardened. Free. The word felt strange in her mouth, like speaking a foreign language she was only beginning to learn. Asa stepped forward, his walking stick tapping against the courthouse stone. The fever had left him hollow-eyed but clear in his purpose. "There's more," he said, his voice carrying across the square. "The church ledger names others. Kitchen folk and field hands who've worked off their price through the poor fund. Time they had papers too." A new murmur ran through the crowd. This was more than one girl's freedom, it was a reckoning with the whole system of debt and bondage. "Aunt Hester," Asa continued, "Old Bram, young Thomas, who works the stable. Their labour's paid their price twice over. I mean to give them choice, stay on for wages, or take their papers and find their fortune elsewhere." "You sure about this?" "Doctor," Carson asked. "Lot of change all at once. Change is coming whether we choose it or not," Asa replied. "Might as well choose to do right." Mercy felt something break open in her chest, not fear this time, but something like joy mixed with sorrow, mixed with possibility. She thought of Aunt Hester's careful hands braiding her hair, of old Bram teaching lantern signals, of little Jonah who would grow up in a world where freedom papers meant more than forged documents. "Mr. Elias," she said, "that work you offered, is it still available? For you and any others who want it. We'll teach letters too, if you're willing to learn. I can read already. Miss Eliza taught me. Then maybe you can teach others." Elias smiled. "Learning travels both ways, like water finding its level." Pike had gone quiet during this exchange, his rage cooling to something like defeat. His patrollers had drifted away, unwilling to stand, with a man exposed as a forger. Even his horse seemed to sense the shift, stamping and pulling against the reins. "This isn't over," Pike said finally. Cullum stepped forward. "Yes, it is. Federal law's clear on fraudulent documents. You want to press this further, we'll be having a different conversation altogether. Pike looked around the square at the crowd, at the event, courthouse, at Mercy, standing with her freedom papers and her Bible and her blue ribbon catching the morning light. Whatever he saw there changed his mind. He wheeled his horse and rode away without another word. The crowd began to disperse as the morning advanced. Farmers had crops to tend, shopkeepers had stores to open, but many lingered, reluctant to leave a scene that felt like witnessing history being written in real time. Mercy found herself surrounded by well-wishers and curious strangers. They wanted to touch her hand, hear her voice, understand how a young enslaved girl had outmaneuvered grown men with law degrees and political connections. "How'd you know?" asked a woman from town. "About the seals and the wax?" "Listened," Mercy said simply. "Remembered what folks said. Put pieces together like a quilt pattern. And the hymns? How'd they help you find the road?" "Aunt Hester taught me. Songs map more than just melodies. They map the way home." As if summoned by her name, Aunt Hester appeared at the edge of the square. She'd ridden the mule cart from the plantation, little Jonah perched behind her. When she saw Mercy standing free with papers in her hand, she climbed down slow and careful. They met in the middle of the courthouse square. Aunt Hester reached out to touch Mercy's face, as if confirming she was real and whole and truly free. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. "Look what morning brought us. Freedom papers," Mercy said, showing her the document with its brown wax seal. "For you too, if you want them." Aunt Hester's eyes filled. 60 years I've been waiting for this day. 60 years of believing it might come, even when hope ran thin as winter soup. Jonah scrambled down from the cart and wrapped his small arms around Mercy's waist. "You really free now?" "Free as morning light," she said, kneeling to his level. "And you will be too, soon as the papers are written." She untied her blue ribbon and wound it around his thin wrist. "This was my freedom ribbon. Now it's yours. What about you?" Mercy looked at the Bible in her hands, then at the courthouse where justice had finally been done, then at the faces surrounding her, some familiar, some strange, all somehow changed by what they'd witnessed. "Don't need a ribbon to remember I'm free," she said. Got that knowledge written deeper than cloth now. Evening found them on the Whitcomb porch, papers spread on the wooden table like a small harvest of hope. Mercy sat with the Bible open to Eliza's penciled promise, now fulfilled. Asa sat across from her, still weak from fever but stronger in purpose than she'd ever seen him. Elias and Miriam Hart had stayed for supper. Old Bram had come up from the quarters to hear the whole story told proper. Even Silas Wren had ridden out from town, bringing fresh copies of all the official documents. "Read it again," Aunt Hester said. "That part about wages and schooling." Mercy lifted the new agreement Asa had, dictated, and Silas had penned in his careful clerk's hand. "All persons previously held in bondage at the Whitcomb plantation shall receive wages for their labor, education for their children, and freedom to choose their path forward." "Wages," Old Bram repeated, tasting the word. "Been a long time since I earned money for my work." "Going to be changes," Asa admitted. "Hard ones, but changes that should have come long ago." Jonah sat at Mercy's feet, the blue ribbon bright around his small wrist. He'd been quiet most of the evening, overwhelmed by the day's events and the idea of freedom he was still too young to fully understand. "Mercy," he said finally, "you going to stay here with us, or go away with the Hart people?" It was the question everyone had been wondering, but nobody had asked direct. Mercy looked around the porch at faces that had been her whole world, at the plantation that had been both prison and home, at the river road that now led to possibilities she could barely imagine. "Might stay a while," she said carefully. "Help with the teaching and the figuring. But freedom means having choices. First time in my life I get to choose my own path." "Choose wisely," Elias said. "Freedom's a gift, but it's also a responsibility." "I will." Mercy closed the Bible and held it against her chest. Got good teachers to learn from. As full darkness settled over the plantation, Mercy lit the porch lantern and set it at the rail's edge, not low for secret signals or high for distress, but steady and welcoming. A light to say that freedom lived here now, imperfect and fragile, but real as the brown wax seal on her papers. The others gradually took their leave. Carriages creaked down the lane. Horses' hooves drummed the packed earth. Voices called goodbyes across the settling darkness. Finally, only Mercy remained on the porch, the Bible in her lap and the freedom papers rustling softly in the night breeze. The lantern's steady circle held her hands in its glow hands that had carried her to freedom, that would carry her wherever she chose to go next. The light held steady, like a promise kept,